My talk today is titled Images of Masculine Desire and Gay Utopia in Red, White, and Royal Blue. My focus today is going to be on paradigm shifts and what I will understand as a journey towards a gay utopia. Red, White, and Royal Blue was released in August of 2023 and based on the novel of the same name by Casey McQuiston. The screenplay was written by director Matthew Lopez. I'd like to begin today's talk by creating a foundation of gay male histories in film and cultural production. The trope of sadness permeated text from Christopher Marlowe's Renaissance Edward II right up into films and novels that dealt with the AIDS pandemic. After AIDS, a devastating period in gay history, finally received some kind of release or relief even, the 1990s began the first glimpses of liberating the queer male subject from the shackles of isolation and unfortunate death, and this was generally done through the guise of drag texts. These films, like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, remain integral stepping stones in reading, viewing, and understanding desire between men in literature and film. The millennium did bring images of masculine desire and queer desire from the film version of Rent to Brokeback Mountain. Neither one of these texts remains conclusive and do embody death and loss. The pre-COVID shifts can be isolated in Moonlight and Call Me By Your Name. In 2005, two films were released, one from the Broadway musical that was a smash hit, Rent, and the other from the 1998 novella by Annie Proulx, which was also a very, very popular piece of short fiction. These pieces formed as stepping stones. These films did present gay male desire, queer desire, trans desire, all kinds of various forms of desire in the case of Rent, and desire between men on the screen. However, as Rent deals with AIDS and Brokeback Mountain does have one of its main characters tragically killed, even though these representational stepping stones are integral, they still embodied a rather acute form of loss. Changes, as David Bowie sung about, started in 2016 and 17 with Moonlight and Call Me By Your Name. Representations that built upon otherness and a not exclusively white subject, as seen with Rent as well, happens in Moonlight. However, the storyline isn't 100% happy. Call Me By Your Name is rather similar. It builds upon a kind of romance which is amazing and wonderful, but there is a beginning, middle, and end. Both films could be understood in response to, at least partially, the notion of star-crossed love or star-crossed lovers. As everything came to a halt with the pandemic, Red, White, and Royal Blue doesn't seem that delayed in response to 2017's Call Me By Your Name. However, it still took 6 years to get this kind of positivity out there on the big screen and achieve a kind of cult following my talk will also address. My synopsis is two privileged men from different countries and backgrounds are thrown together into a really diverse, multicultural depiction of what the world could really look like. As such, the film has much to recommend in response to positive images and EDI. Alex and Prince Henry clash as they have very opposing personalities. As they do press release work, they connect, and a chemistry becomes wonderfully visible. They become involved romantically, entangled in obstacles with being public figures. Separated by Henry's fears at first and then a press leak, the couple learns to stand up for their own identities and come out as lovers publicly. The film embodies important, very important developments in queer cinema. The use of women for strong leader figures. This is evident in the President of the United States and the Prime Minister, as well as their staff. Prime Minister of England, that is. The casting of various tonalities also represents what I feel is an actual vision of what society does look like, often left out from the big screen. Oppositional privileges question and challenge male love. This is kind of the central conflict that works within the center of the film. Barriers that affect public figures are orchestrated, especially in the age of the internet, and this eventually catches our main characters. There is a direct challenge that questions love between men and previous notions of spectacle. The clear visual articulation of a utopia is made in this film, a very gay utopia in particular, a gaytopia. Before arriving at the lexicology of my talk, let's have a look at the leading characters and important representational shifts. Both Alex and Prince Henry are in their early to mid-20s. Their issues with getting their relationship to work don't have to do with homophobia or self-loathing. Their issues stem from being public figures and, in Henry's case, victimized by a repressive legacy. There is no discourse of self-hate, no reductive understanding of masculine desire. Instead, the film creates a romance within the boundaries of the microcosms of the leading men. Alex is the communicator. Henry learns to communicate and does so through action and then words. Each character foils the other in a loving and unique way. Though terribly fortunate, both characters are also incredibly real emotionally and psychologically. They are believable. They thus counter reductive, limiting, and problematic notions about privilege. Alex Diaz. Taylor Perez's own intersectional background allows for a lovely crystallization of a non-white leading man. Taylor, like many of the brown or brownish cast members, present a series of non-white groups, creating an unforced and very positive EDI for the audience. Perez plays a Latino mixed character, as he too is partially Latino. He speaks Spanish in the film and gives a voice to the Spanish-speaking population of America that he represents. Via presentation, action, and script, Taylor gives Alex agency and voice that is important when we think about the various tonalities of men who are part of a larger gay/queer community. Taylor Zakar Perez plays Alex Claremont Diaz. Henry of England. A major legacy bears down on him as a public English figure. Out but clandestine is a pretty interesting combination. He might be European and white, but what bears down on him is heavy. And what I enjoyed was that he did end up looking like a bit of a gay Ken doll. I'm wondering if that was intentional or not. A wonderfully beautiful gay Ken doll, but still. He's deep, he's pensive, and he keeps his emotions tight to his chest until he's 100% certain of a given situation. This complements Alex's rather boisterous and generally impulsive personality. He loves through actions first. When screening, watch the contrast between Alex's words and the ways in which Henry responds physically. Looks, actions, motions, touches. Nicholas Galitzine plays Prince Henry Hanover Stuart Fox. Let's recap and give a major questioning to the semiotics of desire that is generally embodied within texts that represent male-male desire. The Picture of Dorian Gray, Giovanni's Room, Morris, which was written between 1913 and 14, but only published in 1970, and does have a happy ending that was not published until Forster passed. If we think about reading the histories of male desire, we realize that these texts, although they do create ways for queer people, or queer men in particular, to identify and read about themselves, they also create problematic paradigms for understanding romance and love between men. Frequent motifs and tropes embody loss and a deep sadness that leads to isolation and sometimes, or more frequently, even death. These are or were or have been established tropes in both literature and cinema since Christopher Marlowe's Edward II. My larger question is why? Where why can't be responded to, the psycho-emotional aftermath of negative representations needs to be addressed. I'd like to bring to our attention the notion of a collective unconscious and think about the images that are constantly or were constantly placed forward where the gay man is completely othered, nocturnal, predatorial, polygamous. Think about the ways in which these kinds of images shape young minds. Think about the journey from youth to young adulthood and carrying an understanding of the self bathed in these kinds of negative, problematic representations. These ways of thinking would be carried from young adulthood to mature adulthood and beyond. How can we thereby read a visual text or even a written text? From Lacan, we can think about the way that a moving image can be interpreted in response to decoding the language of the visual text as the subconscious itself. The result would be a series of signifying chains presented to the viewer, and thereby problematic signifiers and related immovability of their significations, consistently representing the gay man or queer man in response to predatorial, polygamous, even highly sexualized or negatively sexualized behavior creates signifying chains that, in my understanding, actually does affect the way that many gay men still think about themselves. This way of thinking, or these ways of thinking, would thereby also affect their romantic lives and futures. Again, I'll ask why. Let us think about Stonewall, AIDS, and the 2020s. If Stonewall broke the first barrier, if AIDS forced us to come together as a community and overcome a tragedy that can't be put into words, have we finally arrived in the 2020s? I feel what's happening in 2020s cinema, especially queer cinema, is realism and verisimilitude. Red, White, and Royal Blue demonstrates that through a group of people that includes our main characters, we end up identifying and getting to know young, hip, oppositional characters who embody often unnamed intersectionalities. And these are real representations in our changing world. How soon is now? Yes, I quote the Smiths and their cloistered homosexual lyrics from 1984. I look back on the 90s and think that answers did begin to happen. The millennium had promise. Conservative global governments halted advancements in accepting same-sex desire shortly after the millennium. And the pre-COVID advances and related representations seemed to go on hold during the pandemic, where representations countered often right and conservative governments. The pandemic did put the moving image on hold, at least in part. What happened after COVID, in my understanding, is equally unhelpful. And many of us on campuses have seen post-COVID woke aggression and related fear. There's a false left and a combative understanding of privileged whiteness and other arbitrary categories that leave out people, separate people, divide people, and thereby separate queer community. I would like to ask, in 2024, are we finally healing as a gay community, as a global culture? I think 2023's Red, White, and Royal Blue begins this healing, with shameless representations of bi and gay men as real human beings, not cliches. The film even got a rated R because it chose to demonstrate visually the intensity of the love between Alex and Henry. A classic storyline about romance and desire between young adults searching for themselves is evident. But there's also laughter from the get-go. A gay male text which doesn't use sexuality as spectacle for laughs, but instead, like a sitcom, uses situations to bring laughs to the audience. This rom-com surpasses what has been done previously with masculine desire on screen. The highly orchestrated love scenes reveal that love is part of the exchange between Henry and Alex, not just sex. Tears. Keep a box of Kleenex when you watch this film. The main characters themselves are frequently in tears, especially during the climax, revealing that their love that they feel for one another is just incredibly overwhelming. But the film also embodies healing, and the main characters heal through their interpersonal communication and their amazing love for one another. My research led me to some hilarious fun facts. Fun fact 1, Perez was very concerned about the naked butt scene, so much so that he insisted that Matthew Lopez come into his trailer to check out his butt before the scene was shot. Fun fact 2, Galatzin's character is rather reserved and posh, but Galatzin's own personality is quirky and hilarious to watch. There are reels of him running around with foils in his head, covered by a shower cap, and this selfie was posted pretty much right away while he was getting his hair bleached for the role. You gotta love an actor who just doesn't take themselves seriously, or too seriously. Fun fact 3, Galantzine started another project, and as a result, he cut his hair quite short and dyed it dark. They had to do some last-minute retakes, and there are some wig scenes. So you'll notice at points where Henry's hair appears a little more sandy, blondish brown than blonde, and kind of has a bit of a Justin Bieber-y feel to it. He's actually wearing a wig. My last fun fact is rather touching and moving, and reveals how come the film has the cult following and success that it does. Fun fact 4, the night confrontation scene that takes place as the climax of the film begins had Taylor and Nicholas in actual tears because they were so incredibly moved by what they had to place forward. Supposedly, even after their lunch break, they just couldn't stop crying because the storyline was so heart-wrenching. The result of all of this, and the most important part of this film, is that the visual language reveals integral moments for representational change. Change can only happen through action, and action does include visual language that contributes to a positive understanding of the self, an understanding that breaks from the earlier paradigms that plagued desire between men with negativity, isolation, and death. The film's contribution to masculine desire in queer cinema is that it breaks from the past, hopefully forever. The film thereby breaks the traditions of isolation, torture, loneliness, lies, and death. The film enunciates hope through the characters. They triumph over their own reservations, they stand up to their respective societies, and they are accepted and loved for who they are. The film thereby reveals positive ways to think about love between men. The film thereby embodies utopian visions, consistent positive images, intersectional identities, cultural diversities, ways to think about male desire. Gay, bi, and queer are words used in the film in very specific ways. There's also positive representations of power and authority. Women, people of color, people of implied sexual diversity are represented in important roles in society. There's a direct establishment of a microcosm within the film, and I will refer to this microcosm as a gaytopia. Gaytopia. I've copywritten this word. It's mine. My definition, a vision and or representation of the world that creates a positive version of reality for gay men. This reality is devoid of homophobia, violence, and related stigma. Gaytopia can also be queertopia, a transtopia, or a lesbotopia, as you like it, and perhaps you can find these utopic visions of alternative desires in the cultural production that you like. The gaytopia in this case breaks the paradigm directly from the get-go and thereby allows for a space where the gay male characters can battle with their own coming-of-age rite of passage, not despair, societal shunning, disease, or death. The gaytopia in red, white, and royal blue. This world is part of the real, so this kind of gaytopia that presents itself within the film is our real world, where both Alex and Henry have very particular personal obstacles that they must conquer due to their own places in their given societies. A gaytopia isn't a pastoral, it isn't a type of Eden with a beginning, middle, and end. As a result, it mirrors the real world and reflects important and necessary visions. Do we have realism or romanticism? Are Alex and Henry utopian? Is their desire utopic? I'll leave these questions for you. I would say no. I would say the representational scope of the film creates a beautiful intersection between realism and romanticism to foster very particular images of positive love between men. Concluding thoughts. The merits lie in the racialized diversity and acceptance that exists throughout the film. Power, gender, and race are represented in positive ways. Sexuality and acceptance. Laughs, tears, and a happy ending. Reading representation to anticipate social change. This is probably what I feel is the most important part of this film. And there's thereby visions and differences that matter. Moving away from notions of privilege and so-called whiteness to a world where various peoples have various struggles, universal to who they are as characters, not who we might perceive them to be via their own presentations. The actors and their visions. The leading men of Red, White, and Royal Blue portray very deep instances, both romantically and emotionally. An intimacy coordinator was on set to help make sure that the actors were comfortable and could do their best. This kind of desire between men is often daunting, especially for straight actors or actors who have not confirmed their romantic preferences. As you see in the film, notice glances, smiles, and there's many smiles, as some of the images in this talk reveal, soft touches, and human physical connection. The film thereby breaks from previously disruptive and inconclusive liaisons between two men and envisions their lives in a positive manner. From Instagram fan pages that are amazingly overwhelming to gorgeous fan art that breaks your heart sometimes, I think when looking at cultural production in our current environment, having a look at fan pages and fan art are a great way to see how many people are touched by the kinds of texts that we use for our own research. Fan art Instagram pages reveal that I wasn't the only one who was moved beyond words by this film. And the fan art for this film demonstrates that so many viewers were touched beyond words. The Instagram accounts I found house not just fan pages for the actors, and there's many for the actors, but also for the film. The art, in my opinion, speaks volumes. Another kind of visual language that embodies positivity. Alex and Henry by Audio Core Art. Vanessa Kelly's 2022 Alex and Henry is based on the novel, revealing to us that the source material that Vanessa Kelly uses in her artwork predates the film, and that the novel itself had the ability to reach people already. This is my favorite one, and it's by Shamir Art, and it's an imagined wedding for Alex and Henry. What could be better? Thank you for listening. For those of you who make art, make it have visions we all need. For those of us who study art, study what moves you to further the discourse that looks at your own interests. And for those of us in queer studies of any kind, may we find our voices and agency through the investigations and research that we do. This is another piece by, by V. Kelly Art, and it's Henry and Alex at the piano. So when we have a look at the films that we love, or the TV shows, or the novels, or the graphic novels, or the comic books, have a look at the way that the fans are touched and realize that it's nice to see, at least for me, and I'm sure many of you, positive images of desire between two absolutely amazing young men who, in their fictional creations, hold a future that would be filled with love. Thank you.